It's Thursday, June the 23rd. Lake level got down to normal summer pool. It's right at 917 right now. And water temperature's up there, man. It's mid 80s. I think right here where I'm sitting, I'm way up in the White River. I think it's 88 degrees where I'm at. But look like they slowed the water down today. I don't know what they're going to do now that they've got the lake back down to normal. I know, beaver's still real high, so they'll probably keep running some water through it. But if they shut the water off completely, it's going to change the bite probably quite a bit. But there's been a real good drop shot bite. The lake's starting to develop a pretty solid thermocline, and now that the water generation's slowing down, that thermocline will even get more defined. Depends where you're at on the lake, how deep the thermocline is, but it's anywhere from 25, 30 foot deep. But most of this week I've been down in the lower end of the lake, and what seems to be working best for me there's a drop shot. And I'm throwing a 4-inch chompers, brown purple worm, or a striking dream shot, morning dawn color. But fish seem to be out over the tops of trees. If you've got the Missouri Conservation brush piles loaded into your fish finders, they're on a lot of the conservation brush piles. They're also out on these long flat gravel points. A lot of times you won't see too many out on them long flat gravel points until you hook one. Then there'll be, several, you'll catch several in one area. A lot of the bluff ends seem to be a good spot for the drop shot as well. I haven't done very much on a football jig or shaky head or anything down lake. Now I am catching fish up in the river arms. Today I'm way up in the White River, and there's been a good deep crankbait bite, Carolina rig bite, and actually catching some better fish. This is a 5-fish ultimate shaky head. It's a 5/8 ounce shaky head, and I've got a 10-inch plum worm on there. And these guys that make that worm, I think they're from Highlandville, but Dark Side, they make some really good plastic baits. So, check them out. That's what I'm throwing right here. But like a Zoom Old Monster will work real well. And, this time of year when the water gets real hot, especially up in the river arms, the thermocline won't get as deep. It'll be maybe 18 to 20. We're down by the dam, it's 30 to 35. But in the heat of the summer like this, them bigger fish like big baits. Another bait, if I'm Carolina rigging, I like a full-size brush hog, like a watermelon red. I usually dip the tail in a little bit of chartreuse. Seems to me that a lot of the better fish are getting out there where that thermocline is. The water's a little cooler, and there's a lot more bait out there as well. And what I'm looking for is just like bluff ends, humps that come way out into the lake that got drops on them. And what I'll do a lot of times, I'll idle around them, look for bait fish, and then start fishing a little bit. I'll start out with a crankbait. If I see the fish close to the bottom, I'll pick up a jig, like a football jig, or that big worm, or even a Carolina rig, like a PBJ football jig. And a lot of times I've got a smaller craw on this, but a lot of times I'll use a bigger craw. Kind of goes in with what I was talking about with the bigger worms and the big brush hog. But this is also a time of year, I don't know if you can see where I'm at, but I think it's 2.5 feet deep where I'm setting. There's a bunch of scattered brush in here. Water's 88 degrees. A lot of people think there's not going to be any fish up in here, but right here behind me there's water flow in this little river, so it's got oxygen back up here, and there is no deep water for these fish to go. Yesterday in the heat of the day, I caught one about 3 pounds on this little Cyclone Junior, and they finally got these out on the market. You can get them in Bass Pro Shops. I know Extreme Outdoors has got them. I was throwing a black one up here in the middle of the day. But, it's the real deal. I'm not just trying to pump the bait up. I got onto it last fall when they sent me a couple of them to try, and it worked real good at a time that the whopper plopper was working. But it's also working for me real good up here in the heat of the day around some of this real shallow cover. A lot of times you can throw it like a buzz bait, or you can work it like a pawpaw or a popping bait. It works real well. But you can also use a walking bait around this real shallow stuff. Another bait I'm throwing up here is a square bill. And this is a citrus shad, Hunter 65. I had to look at the number, but you know, it's kind of between like a 1.5 and a 2.5. I'll usually start out with it, and if I feel like I need a smaller bait that'll run a little shallower, I'll downsize if I think I need a little bit of bigger one. A lot of it will be dependent on the shad that I'm seeing, what size they are. And if I'm getting the bait hung up quite a bit, if I'm, you know, in the real shallow water, not so much hung up, but picking up leaves and trash, I'll go to a little smaller bait where it won't dig on the bottom. But what you want to do up here is any kind of wood that you see, you want to bounce, you know, cast these baits past them and run it right through them. You know, throw it like you're not afraid to lose it. The good thing about it, it's shallow enough. If you do get it stuck, you can, you know, you can get in there and get them out. And the same with the topwater baits. A lot of that fish, when the sun's up like this, they're going to be tucked up tight to that cover. If that doesn't work, you can try to flip a little jig or a little worm. But even though, you know, it's 95, 100 degrees out and the water's getting super hot, fish are still biting. If you're in the deeper water, it seems like after 9 o'clock or so, you got to get down there deep, you know, down there around the Thermocline. And a lot of these same baits will work down lake as well. If you're up in the river arms or fishing creeks, what I like to do is try to get in a creek that has either got springs coming into it or where it's got water flow, where I feel it's got fresh water coming in, where it's got, you know, oxygen up in there to keep the fish real shallow. But one of the main deals on the shallow fish, kind of look around for the bait. And a lot of times the more isolated the cover, the better. So, like I say, the lake's been really quiet, and, you know, I actually found about a 25-degree water temperature difference today. We went way up the White, just below the tailwaters of Beaver, and they were generating quite a little bit of water, but in the backs of some of them creeks, and they were spring-fed creeks, but we had, you know, 57, 58-degree water temperature, where once you get out into the main river channel, it was mid-80s, so almost 30 degrees difference. But if you want to look for cooler water, you can find it. You know, just go way up in the river arms where the cooler water's coming in. But they will bite in that warm water as well. So till next week, good luck, good fishing.